When you pick up a new guitar, what is it that most impresses you? Is it the looks, the build quality, or just the fact it's a guitar you've always thought you wanted? Well, for many of us, obviously, playability and sound are at the top of the list. Now, today I'm going to talk a little about what we can reasonably expect based upon my experience with the guitars I bought for review over the past 3 years. So let's dive in. About a third of all new guitar purchases are made without the buyer ever touching the instrument until they open the box. Honestly, I actually thought the number would be higher these days, but it seems the majority of buyers still try before they buy, always best when possible. In any case, this would seem to be a great incentive for manufacturers to put in the effort to make a good first impression. Yet when I look at new guitars, the truth is, most of them don't really play all that well. Now, the dealer will tell you, don't worry, it just needs a setup. But what does that really mean? Unfortunately, simple adjustments are not always the issue. The real playability problems are likely to come down to the quality of the fret leveling, crowning, and polishing, and how well the nut is slotted and finished. Now, simple adjustments, which is all the in-house tech is likely to do, won't necessarily guarantee a smooth playing guitar. So why is this? Well, clearly it has to be the sheer numbers they're cranking out these days. Now, my first two guitars were built in the 60s, when only a small fraction of today's numbers were being made. They were new when I got them, and the playability was spot on. But accurate setups require time, effort, and skill. Now, when companies are building guitars by the thousands, most just aren't going to take the time. Now, when I review guitars for this channel, I only do a basic setup. I adjust the rod, set action and intonation, and work on the nut if needed. So while I've never been a tech, this has given me some experience with how different guitar manufacturers deliver their guitars. Now first, keep in mind, these are small sample sizes. So if I report a certain guitar had especially good or bad playability, I'm fully aware the one you bought could be the opposite. Now obviously, all the guitars I reviewed were perfectly playable. You saw and heard me playing them, and I suspect a majority of buyers would be happy with them as is. None were that bad. It's really more about how much work they were to play compared to my guitars, which have very precise setups. Okay, let's start with the lower-priced Chinese and Indonesian-built models, which I found mostly pretty similar in quality. All perfectly playable, but not always smooth rides. And it varied quite a bit even within the same brand and price range. For instance, one Squire would be almost stage ready, and the next would fall pretty short. For example, the Vintage Vibe 70s Tele Deluxe I reviewed felt really great. Now, the Epiphones were, in general, pretty decent overall. A few had several high frets, most needed work on the nut, and fret sprout was super common. Now, one of the most playable of the lower-priced models I featured was the very budget-friendly Epiphone Les Paul Jr. The sires were mostly pretty good, with some of the better fret ends at those price points. Now, like most, the leveling could be a little hit or miss, and like all factory guitars, it was more luck than price. In fact, one of the best was the very low-cost Sire S3. Now, sticking with the Asian imports, moving up in price gets you better components and nicer appointments. But most of the ones coming out of the big factories in China or Indonesia can still be a crapshoot in the playability department. For instance, I reviewed two of the pricier Epiphones, the 150th anniversary Sheraton, and the inspired by Gibson custom ES355. Now, these were identically priced at about $1,300 US. And while the Sheraton played pretty well, it still needed a trip to my guy to get it stage ready. On the other hand, the 355 easily had the best out-of-the-box playability of any Chinese-built Epiphone I've ever touched. Now, here's where I need to point out that others have apparently received ES355s that didn't play so well. So I'll say it again. Most factory guitars produced in huge numbers are not going to be consistent in this regard. But some tend to be more consistent than others. Yamaha, at least the Revstars I reviewed, were both well above average. Reverend is a USA brand built in Korea. But last I saw, they're still shipped to the USA facility for final setup work before they go to the retailer. This is an approach I'd like to see more, and my review guitar played quite well. And as far as I know, PRS SE also goes to the US factory, where the fretwork and overall setup is checked and corrected where necessary, which probably explains why SEs play so nicely. Okay, let's move to some higher-priced guitars. By now, just about everyone knows Gibson uses the Plek machine to level the frets on their regular production guitars. So they should be perfect, right? Well, as I've mentioned previously, not really. A large company using Plek in a production capacity is not remotely the same as having a Plek job done by a shop. My understanding is it's about a 10-minute leveling, whereas a full Plek job generally takes around 2 hours. So just a basic leveling under simulated string tension. While I'd say current new Gibsons play better on average than they did in the earlier 2000s, they're far from all smooth, perfect players. And luck still has more to do with it than price, at least outside the custom shop. One of the best playing modern Gibsons I reviewed was the relatively inexpensive Les Paul Special, which played better than the far more expensive 60s Standard. Judging by my review guitars, Fender, both USA and Mexico, has been pretty decent lately. Not perfect, but close, and I could have taken any of them straight on stage with no real problem. An especially smooth player was the Mexican-made Vintera 2 60s Strat. Now, the Ibanez models I've tried have all been well above average, with the Prestige models being truly impressive. I should also mention G&L. While the Tribute series can be as hit or miss as most other low-priced imports, the USA G&Ls are truly top-notch. I was hugely impressed with the USA Legacy I tested. I didn't need another Strat, but I really would like to have kept that one. Some of the nicest mainstream guitars coming out of China are the Eastmans. Now these remain handmade, mostly luthier-built guitars that can be truly world-class instruments. I've reviewed several, and while they weren't all perfect, they were all very impressive. But the mainstream company with the most consistently excellent playability has to be Paul Reed Smith. From the least expensive SEs to the priciest USA models, you can almost always expect smooth playability right out of the box. Any company can produce a lemon, of course, and I'm not saying the SEs quite match the USA guitars, but to their credit, PRS clearly prioritizes the initial playing experience. So what are the key takeaways? Well, never before has there been such an enormous selection of good quality guitars at all price points. But depending on your needs and expectations, choose carefully, but keep in mind almost any modern guitar can be made to play very well with a little work. So either shop for a guitar that plays great right off the rack, or just budget for some extra work. And if you're the type who enjoys doing your own work, well, there's plenty of information available on the tools and skills you'll need to learn to do your own top-notch setups. But unless you plan to work on multiple guitars, buying the tools might add up to more than paying for a quality repairman or luthier. So today's video was a little different. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. It'll be another review next week, so I will see you then.